Hey guys, it's Zach, and today we're here to talk about what the title implies. I've created a magic system for the Magicless, and I know that may seem paradoxical, but wait, just let me cook. I did this for a lot of reasons. Most of them I'll be going over in this video here today, along with how it works, and how it solves the non-caster versus caster dilemma that I have often seen in discourse in my many years as a professional DM across the internet, and what exactly a system like this means to the world around it, as well as what it's meant to accomplish, because there is a goal here. In designing my battle art system, which, by the way, is a martial combat system inspired by the Ashes of War from Elden Ring, don't worry, it's probably gonna be in the next video. It'll probably be the next video, actually. I realized I needed to write the foundation for what any of this would be even based off of. You know, why would you be able to do the things you can do? I could have gone the lazy route and provided a brief 3-sentence summary and moved on, but no. I had to write a 5-page document about it. Why? I don't know. It just made sense. And now we're here. Now, don't get me wrong, I already had this idea in my head, in theory, but never written out as extensively as I have here in this video, for the consumption of others at least. But in my writing frenzy, which ended with me having written over 35 pages of feature, lore, and world-building related content in the span of 5 days, to say that I got lost in my creative sauce would be an absolute understatement. And that's when I realized I had made a massive mistake. I ended up creating at least 6 videos worth of content. This is the second time this has happened. It'll probably just be a trend from here on out. But hey, you know what? You guys get more content and I get more stuff because I'm a workaholic. So in a way, we all win, right? My addiction for making content is fed, and you know, you get to consume said content. So, you know, we're both rewarded in a way. I don't have an addiction. I have an addiction to working. Anyways, if you would like to see how all of that develops, and if you would like to join in on the ride, be sure to subscribe. And if you would like to see the result of all that hard work, you can head over to my Patreon, where you can find the recently released 1.5 version of my spell binding system, which includes like 40 extra spell binds, which makes like 50 or 60 of them. I lost count. But for those that don't know, I made a binding vow system for D&D. Yes, it's based off of Jujutsu Kaisen. You can find the video over on my channel. The systems spoken about here will also be available over on my Patreon as well, with additional info as to how each class fits or suits a particular power type for those of you who'd like to adopt this approach in your world building. So, as we hop into the meat of this video, before I get sidetracked, I asked myself a question, and one I'm sure you guys are all wondering. Why? Why did you make this? Well, because I think it's kind of weird to be in a high fantasy world wherein only the casters hold all the magical potential, or only the casters are able to interact with the magic in that world. In one way, it makes sense. But when the fundamental aspect of the world is that most of every mortal is born with some kind of magic, this also means that there are mortals who use very rudimentary and basic forms of those magical concepts which make up the world. Think of it like this. In our world, we have basic math, algebra, then slightly more advanced maths like trigonometry and calculus. There would be levels of understanding to the fundamental aspects of a world's magic. At those base levels, you would have normal combatants, and when you get into trigonometry, calculus, and beyond, you would start to steer into the more magic casting aspects of the world in terms of your level of understanding of the craft. But at a base level, people who operate within the world, or at least in the space of adventuring, would understand math and algebra to some extent, or at the very least would have some type of run-in with it like you and me in our daily lives. Meaning that everyone is just a little bit more fantastical in my world, as everyone gets to interact with the more magic aspects of it in some way, shape, or form, even at its most basic, just like how we do with math. You see, there is a certain beauty in that, And one of the biggest dilemmas I've noticed in my 5 years of being a professional DM are the reasons cited by players who sort of try to force the magic angle onto their characters so that way they can feel more like they're a part of the world, which, in my opinion, is a little unnecessary. But I've realized that the issue was always that the player felt like they'd have no impact without magic, or like they wouldn't really have an amazing story without forcing it onto their character's journey. And this particular issue has always plagued me, as I've always wanted to solve that disconnect, because given my earlier example, in a world where magic inundates existence from the ground up, the concept would be like breathing and would ideally be a part of natural life for all denizens of that world. And with that logic, they should be able to interact with magic even in its most basic form. This system sets out to answer the age-old, how can a guy with a sword ever beat a guy that casts spells? And it also gives the non-magic caster something new to roleplay with as well. It overall evens the playing field when it comes to the scope of a character, giving someone who doesn't have access to magic or the ability to cast it the chance to have those amazing high fantasy storylines that involve it, without having to sacrifice the integrity of their character to get there, because it's baked in from the very beginning. So, I finally made my loose concept into reality in the form of the Mythic Fount system, which every player in my games have to go over during character creation, and in doing so sets up their character for various features later down the line. Starting at second level, the player in mind would choose between 4 different sources of power, given they aren't a class, which already implicates the presence of one. The Arcane Soul, the Touch of Eth, the Divinius Shard, and the Wellspring of Life, each of them representing a different aspect of power within my fantasy settings. To start, we're going to discuss the Arcane Soul, or rather, I'm going to give a brief explanation on it because I already have 2 videos on this channel talking specifically about that source of power. So you can go ahead and check those out there. And with that, we are going to continue forward. And for the sake of brevity and this video, I'll give a brief explanation as to what it is here. The Arcane Soul is something every creature possesses. However, there are some individuals that seek to cultivate this form of magic and their relationship with it further. The source inherently derives from a type of metaphysical body that exists and overlaps with the physical. There are many components and levels to understanding that create a magic caster within my fantasy setting. From the Magi's capillaries, which dictate the flow of magic within the body, to magic flow efficiency, which determines the rate of how much magic someone uses when casting a desired spell. Again, I don't want to rehash a concept that I've already spoken about at length here on the channel, and so with that, in the future, I'll probably be making a full-length video talking about each of the magic systems present within my settings, as what is presented here in this video is a highly condensed version of all of these topics pieced together for a single video. Moving on to our second source of power, we have the Touch of Eth. This particular source of magic is one that derives from the planet itself. There are creatures and mortals who are marked by the world or chosen by nature to have the ability to access the flow of Eth. It is possible to tap into the flow of Eth without ever being born able to do so. However, the process of learning can take some time. After all, being able to sense the world and attune yourself to its forces can be quite the alien process if you've come from a background of cultivating your arcane soul. Because the power ultimately isn't your own, it's not based on a centralized view of manifesting it from yourself, much like with the Arcane Soul. This brings a type of magical disconnect for those that wish to study both forms of magic, as the ideology of one conflicts with the ideology of the other, since the Arcane Soul is based from within and the Touch of Eth is based in the outside and reaching into the world to grab its power. And when utilizing the flow of Eth in casting magic, the user in question draws primal magic into themselves from their environment. This magic then mixes with their arcane soul and in a sense temporarily overtakes it with primal magic. The user then extends this energy when casting a spell or using an ability. The magic then leaves the individual, but it also leaves behind traces of primal magic from its use. Through time, a practitioner who specializes in the flow of Eth and the usage of primal magic will find their arcane souls inundated with this form of power, until eventually the flow of Eth is all that remains. This is rightfully deemed the primal soul. Almost like a form of naturistic enlightenment, this state is called the primal soul, and it signifies a complete connectedness to the flow of Eth, and at this stage one may access entirely different tiers of magic where they may wield the voice of the world itself as their own, or alternatively wield the wild powers of the primal ley lines that outstretch across the entire world deep below them. The magic this creates can be akin to one commanding the very forces of nature with their beck and call. You want wind, you get wind. You want a tornado, you get a tornado. You want an earthquake, you get an earthquake. You want to cause the trees in the forest around you to spontaneously spring to life and defend you, that can happen too. Or, conversely, when connecting to the primal ley lines, you would be connecting to an ancient vast network of magic that few people have ever seen. Making our way halfway through the list of mythic founts, we have the Divinius Shard, the divine magic system of my settings, and you might be thinking, isn't that just pray and cast magic? Well, no, it is not. One of the core tenets of my thought process when constructing all of this was to really give each form of magic its own unique flavor that feels familiar but is original in its implementation. So when it comes to the basics of divine magic in my worlds, you as a mortal can't mystically just muster it from nothing or believing in yourself. Divine magic derives from higher beings and gods, and that relationship can be disrupted, ended, or even changed throughout one's journey. The mortal in question never truly owns this power and realistically can lose it if their faith wavers or their deity deems them unfit for it. You may be asking, how does one even connect to a deity in the first place? Well, that's where the Divinius Shard comes into play. You see, the anti-Divinius deities created all known and unknown mortal creatures, and within each of their childer, they left a sliver of themselves, like divine DNA, which is retained throughout the generations, and the act of specializing in divine magic foretells an especially bright Divinius Shard, a strong connection to the ones who created you. You see, the Divinius Shard within mortals act like a twinkling star to you and me in the night sky. The brighter the star, the more powerful one's Divinius Shard appears to a deity of my world. This is how deities notice mortal beings within my world. Even so much as a glance in your direction will earn you some connection to the divine. Thereafter, as you would advance through the world becoming stronger, your Divinius Shard within also becomes brighter and brighter with prayer and worship, allowing your selected god or goddess to see you more clearly in that night sky. The connection to your deity becomes greater and greater as time goes on, and as you attain new heights, their voice becomes clearer. Think of it like a phone with one bar. At the early levels, you would only have really one. You would hear static, and as your bars go up, the voice of your deity becomes clearer and clearer until you're at full bars, and their voice cuts through the astral sea directly to you. From this point, a deity can grant you the power to use miracles, powerful game-changing spells themed after your chosen deity, or even give you a word of providence, a spoken prayer which grants the wielder the armaments of their deity. But that's all much later on, and I'd love to go into details, but alas, we have to move to our final magic system of our video here today, and one that might surprise you all. So remember that Wellspring of Life I talked about at the very beginning? Well, that's my key-based magic system. Yes, that's right, key. That weird power that monks occasionally use that no other class can. Yeah, I just made it a general thing that more people have access to. I think key needs some love, generally speaking. The Wellspring of Life is a magic system about the utilization of the very energies which engineer life itself. It is a force of power much like with the others that any mortal can really possess, but for those who truly devote themselves to this practice, they're able to grant themselves increased health, enhanced physical prowess, and even supernatural hardiness. This mystical form of power, like the others, can be taught or even awoken in some through a master who has completely honed the ability to manipulate their inner wellspring. Through practice, he can accomplish many things within my setting. After all, it is a form of magic. Which means some of the core fundamental rules of magic also apply to it, such as when a practitioner wraps their hands and legs in ki, they achieve the same or similar supernatural hardiness that a magical weapon would. This means that they can block a bladed attack with their bare hands and have it scrape off as if the steel blade has collided with a shield of some kind. A strike infused with one's life energy can heavily disfigure non-magical metals, break swords, and even bend them with relative ease. And for those who master this flow of energy, they're able to unlock their invertius features, which, to sum it up, are the class features of a monk, but given a spin, a reversal of how they would usually function, which can lead to some pretty interesting results. A monk who chooses to abstain from magic entirely by initiating a process known as unsealed chakras, a type of meditation that makes it so one's ambient magic is converted into ki within the body, maintaining the soul but at the same time cutting off any and all connection to magic. This process fills the body with so much ki, the mortal in question becomes something entirely different. Supernaturally fast and strong, they operate on a different frequency than their mortal contemporaries, having unsealed their body's potential entirely. With lifespans extended far beyond what they would normally have due to the sheer inundation of life energy, those who undergo this process truly live with no attachment, having untethered themselves from magic itself. And although I could sit here and just talk about all of this for literal hours on end, that will bring us to the end of our video. I really hope you guys all enjoyed, and I definitely had a lot of fun making it, and I really enjoyed being able to show off some of the magic systems of my world. Oh, that's right, there are about 8 of them in total. But here in our video, I decided to just cover the primary forms of power, and I'll probably create more extensive videos about the others sometime in the future. If you want to be around for when that day comes, be sure to subscribe. Leave your thoughts and questions in the comments down below, as I do read and respond to them. And finally, don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed the video. With that, my friends, I'll see you all in the next one.